The APAC region will continue this year to have fairly robust growth, but we're beginning to see signs of moderation in those growth numbers, particularly from the middle of 2018. Now, we know that the IMF has recently come up with their World Economic Outlook forecast, and they've downgraded their forecast for 2019. I think it's about 3.3% compared to last year, which was, I think, a little higher, 3.6 or 3.7%. In APEC too, our forecast has been adjusted as well. We're looking at a little higher, at about 3.8% compared to 4.1% in 2018. What are the reasons for the moderation in growth? Of course, one of the concerns, of course, is trade tensions, particularly between US and China. That leads to a lot of uncertainty in terms of investment sentiments as well as business confidence. So that takes a toll. There's also concerns about a slowdown in the economy in China, a lot of uncertainties also in the EU. We also have Brexit that's been thrown into the mix of downside risk. Well, we've seen contractions in trade numbers, exports and imports from about 2016, and we saw that upturn happening in 2017 and growth both in trade volume and trade and in value terms. But we do begin to see that moderation or slowing down in exports and imports from the middle of 2018. And that's kind of reflected in the GDP forecast numbers as well. But we also worryingly are beginning to see also an increase in trade restrictive measures, increase in non-tariff barriers that would have an impact on supply chains. And it's kind of I would call it a bit of a nasty cycle because increase in tariffs or different types of non-tariff barriers will increase prices of intermediate goods, raw materials. Again, that's passed on to final goods, raising prices, and that may have an impact on consumption, and that would have negative spillovers to the real economy. One way to address or to lower these risks would be to maintain a much more accommodative, easy monetary policy, if it's possible, where in economies where inflation is not a major concern. Also for those who do have the financial resources to see whether they can implement different types of fiscal policies to stimulate growth. Other ways, of course, is to look at other types of drivers of growth. Consumption is important, we know that, particularly on the demand side. But what are the important drivers of growth that's out there that is still untapped? We know that there's a lot of potential in e-commerce and in the digital economy and as a whole. What can policymakers do to facilitate greater trade, particularly in what we call the online platform, which is growing quite significantly? There's other types of drivers of growth. Services sector, again, is another important area, which is also related to the digital economy. How can we facilitate greater services and trade? How can we try to open up more of the services sector for more business opportunities? These are some of the things that we can do. Looking at future drivers of growth, I think, will be quite important. So, APEC's role can play a very important role in trying to address many of these possible reforms. APEC itself is quite a unique forum. It has both a mix of developed economies and developing economies. So it's an ideal platform for sharing of best practices, of experiences, and seeing what can be done in terms of to initiate many of these kinds of reforms. What are the challenges that can be done? Another important area of reforms, of course, is productivity. I mean, productivity, there's been a bit of a paradox where we've seen an increase in technology and introductions of new types of digital technologies, artificial intelligence, but we're seeing labor productivity continue to decline. So APEC could be a very important platform to see why is that happening? Why do we continue to see a decline, particularly in productivity, both in developed economies and developing? Again, it's a good platform to see, is it a measurement problem or is it to do with skill mismatches, training? So it's a great platform for that to talk about these issues, to see whether what different economies are doing and whether they can share these experiences in terms of policy making.